Thank you for the invitation. I've been here before. I think it was 2010 when I hit the papers the first time. Never thought that 6 years later I'll still be fighting the fight, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm going to give you a brief overview. I can talk for an hour or 2 hours. The more I talk, the fewer questions you will have. But I think we're running sort of short of time, so I'll try to be brief. Thank you for everybody who came, people coming from Cape Town, from the big mother city, old friends, people who offered to record this for us, to put on YouTube afterwards. Thank you very much for everybody here. It's a great honor. And I hope after tonight you will understand where we are headed and what the progress has been. So without further ado, I would like from the floor, if anybody who knows something about the case can just briefly in one sentence tell me what they think this court case is about. Yeah. No, you know what it's about, so you know. I want somebody who doesn't know. Thank you, Anna. Anybody else? Yeah. Right. That's one view. Anybody else? Venture? After this show, hopefully everybody will know exactly where we're going. Just a brief overview. In 1996, the big change was 1994, but in 1996, December, we got to a new constitution, which is a very brave document, and especially two parts are important to all of us, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, and Chapter 2 being the Bill of Rights. From that grew the National Policy on Religion in Education, which was promulgated in 2003, which is the year that Hubble first took its first photographs, and my children were born. Not at all. You know, the Mars lander landed on my wife's birthday. I told her I had to do a lot to achieve that for her. Now, from that policy, there's a lot in the policy, and I urge you to read it. It's a brilliant document. But it says two things most importantly. We must move decisively beyond the barriers erected by apartheid, and that is what we're battling with today. And it clarifies the role that the religious observances and religious instruction in schools should be like. So when you hear in the press that they think they know how to do it, no, it's not. It says in the policy exactly how it should be done and what the parameters are, the outside parameters. And the fact is, schools are simply not keeping to it. My engagement started when my kids turned 6 or 7 when they entered school, and I found that the policy simply wasn't being implemented at school. So that's where the fight began. I finally reached the front page news in 2009, which is when you guys started hearing about me, and invited me to come and have a talk here. By 2011, I founded Ogod with 2 of my friends, whom is in the audience, but I think he doesn't want to be identified. There he is. The esteemed Yuri van den Heever, well known for his views on science in the papers as well as on the radio. I published my book on the Judgment Day. The world was supposed to end. I knew it wouldn't. And in the book, I wrote a lot about the history and the psychology and the politics and the Afrikaner being behind what is causing all this. So I'm not blaming the Afrikaner, but most certainly the Afrikaner apartheid era, now the old broederbonders, have a huge stake in what's happening in our schools today. And then legal action finally in 2014. They didn't bank on me finding money to do the legal case. Obviously, people knew, the people who were defending their old turf, they knew that any parent who could afford to take a case to court will simply afford to put his child in a private school. So they thought they were safe. What happened is I found a legal team, quite competent one, the same team who has won the euthanasia case, and they're doing this pro bono for us. I'll talk a little bit about them later on as well. So, legal action came in 2014. Don't you like my Poseidon incarceration there? This is colleague Creel of AfriForum. Those two gentlemen I won't name to keep the innocent from being embarrassed. 2014, I hit the news And why? Because 20 years has gone past since the promulgation of our Constitution, and we're still defending religious apartheid in schools. That is a problem. What do? You start nailing things to church walls. We were supposed to bury Christian nationalist education. You guys will remember it. It served a purpose, I suppose, but it's supposed to be gone. This is the kind of stuff that we were taught. That's a rough translation, my own translation. We have this thing about Christians being true to themselves. You know, the broederliefde being only for Christians of the same color. That stuff was supposed to be dead and buried during 1994. It didn't happen. After that, this is what was designed for us, for our education system. An evidence-based, child-centered model with critical thinking, and there are the aspects about critical thinking, knowledge, skills, and human rights-based values. That's important, human rights-based values, as intrinsic notions of the education system. That was designed for us, but not the government's fault that it's not happening. What we used to have, and you'll remember this, the Christian national education system, which instilled religious dogma. It told you who to believe in. Anybody else was just secondary. It constrained free thought. You could think as free as you wanted as long as it didn't oppose the Bible or the government. You remember those days. Concealed knowledge about us, and Yuri will tell us all about that, because in paleontology and anthropology and all those ologies, we didn't know about things like evolution. Only after I left school did I find out what evolution was about. And of course they endorsed this God's chosen people interpretation of the Bible. Remember those days? Now, that was supposed to be buried in 1994, but it wasn't. Even after we got the Constitution and the national policy, we still have this vacuum that was created when that was simply taken away. Was filled now by the reformist Afrikaner Calvinists. Those, I refer to them fondly as the Potchefstroom-doppers. And the new allies, the evangelical ones, those guys you will see in all the schools. And in total, they only make about 15% of the religious people of South Africa, but they are now wagging the dog. They're holding our kids hostage. Those are the two main groups influencing what's happening in schools. How do we get them to the present? Well, we have the Bill of Rights, which is part of the Constitution. We have the National Policy on Religion and Education. We have the Schools Act, blah, 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 lots of things. The legal framework is there. It's just a question of somebody forcing them now to actually come and join us in the present, which is we get in. Now, I urge you to read the Constitution, those who haven't done it yet. It's quite an easy book to read, especially the first two chapters, but two important sections. On number 9, on equality, everyone has the right to equal protection and benefit, that's fine enough. But equality includes the full and equal enjoyment of all rights and freedoms. So schools and everything, whatever the one has, the other one must also be able to enjoy. And to promote the achievement of equality, legislative and other measures may be taken. So things like, for example, the national policy may be used to force schools to actually get to the program. The state may not unfairly discriminate against various grounds, and include pregnancy, because that's important. There was a case in the High Court in Welkom where the schools were forcing the pupils to tell them when they were pregnant. And the Constitutional Court ruled that you cannot force a child, that's a private thing. You cannot force or expect a child to inform the school she's pregnant. And that's crucial for what's coming later. Sexual orientation, you don't have to tell them if you're gay. It's nothing to do with them, religion, conscience, etc. So that is key. It's a critical part of what we're fighting for. And then also national legislation must be enacted to prevent or prohibit unfair discrimination. That's where we're coming to. Then the bit that gets quoted a lot. Freedom of religion, belief and opinion. Everybody has the freedom, right? And this is where it gets interesting. Religious observances may be conducted at state or state-aided institutions, in other words, at schools. But the key word here is at, not by. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. The key word here is at. You may conduct them at the school, not by the school. So the school is not supposed to arrange this. And those observances have to follow rules made by the appropriate public authorities. Again, plural there. That is another key point. They must be conducted on an equitable basis, and attendance at them must be free and voluntary. If you open a class with a prayer, attendance is not voluntary. The national policy had a couple of stipulations that are very clear. Schools must avoid adopting a particular religion. They should be explaining what religions are about. In other words, we're not supposed to pretend that there are no religions in the world. That's important stuff. They must clarify the religious and non-religious sources of moral values. It's important for schools to tell or to teach children about where moral values come from. Remember, Hammurabi coined the first tablets with the moral code. That was in, I think, 89 BC. So the history of morals has come a long way, long before the Old Testament was even written down. And then, also importantly, schools must create an overall environment that engenders a sense of acceptance, right? Now, how do you do that when you say this is, for example, a Christian school, but somebody else is welcome here? That does not engender a sense of acceptance. It has other provisions which I find very useful. It's about the equality of all religions. You can't say that the Doppers are worth more than the Muslims, for example. The state is impartial, and the state being its schools as well, because the school is an instrument of the state. Must retain impartiality in terms of religions. And the schools are to uphold neutral values. Not all religious values are consistent with our constitution. So here it makes a difference. I had, for example, recently somebody wrote to me in the papers because I dared to mention Satanism. He said Satanism is an unholy thing and it's wrong and it's against the constitution. It's not. The constitution accepts Satanism as an equal religion. And perhaps some Satanists do things, like eating cats and eating babies that are unconstitutional. And that will be unconstitutional if that is the case. But now we know that we are involved in a case with a Christian church who proposes corporal punishment for 1-year-old babies. That is unconstitutional. So are we now supposed to say that Christianity is unconstitutional? No, for the same reason you can't say Satanism is unconstitutional. It gives a specific responsibility for schools. Schools have that responsibility, different from religious education, where they are supposed to teach facts about religion. So they must teach children things like the symbols of the various religions we find in South Africa, the dress codes, the habits, perhaps the holy days, etc. So we teach facts about religions, as we do about nature and history, etc. But we don't teach children in our public schools how to be religious or what makes a good religious person. That's not the job of the school. You can do that elsewhere. But in the school, we stick to facts. Now, this is important if you want to understand why it's not working. This null curriculum is everything a child will gather while at school. So he gets into school at grade 0, comes out of school at grade 12. What he has accumulated from school is everything that we call the null curriculum. That's not just factual knowledge of specific subject. The subject knowledge is the technical curriculum. That's the stuff that's written in the books, the handbooks that they will learn and assimilate. And that technical curriculum is influenced by this model that we saw earlier, which is knowledge-based, child-centered, human rights-based values. So that is the plan that our government has for it, and the school books are drawn up that way. But there's a hidden curriculum. And that hidden curriculum is influenced by the religious controllers, the control freaks. And they put in this null curriculum values that they value important, they think children should learn. And if you don't want your child to learn that, they have this attitude of fit in or fuck off. Either you will fit in and like this, or find yourself in another school. That is what they've told us in so many words. A typical things that they will put is the revealed truth. But this is where we find the creationism, Earth is 6,000 years old, and evolution is evil. You will hear that there is a dual system out there. So we have supernature and we have nature. We have souls and all goals and all kinds of weird and wonderful things. That is not supposed to be taught by schools. We have religious favoritism, of course, God's chosen people. Condemnation of the other. Teachers in class telling children in grade 1 that their little Mikey, who's a Muslim in the other class, is going to hell. That's not the job of the teacher. And of course, the favorite one is total depravity. The original sin, we're all born utterly crap. And we're going to hell for that unless we give our hearts to Jesus. Now, if you want to teach your child that at home, be my guest. It's not the teacher's job. These are examples of the hidden curriculum as it comes through in school. And I can put hundreds up here. These are just a few ones. I don't even have to explain them. Typically, you'll see the evangelical type, and you'll see the dopper type. Praise Jesus. Guess which one is that? Prize giving, bringing mirror. Child. Fetch your report from the church. Every Wednesday, our headmaster tells us in church, we're going to burn in hell forever. The headmaster of the school. Okay? Like this. It's not the same guy. Another headmaster, very proudly, playing Sunday school. So the state institution is part of branding a child according to his religion. Now again, you're welcome to accept a religion. You're welcome to teach your children a religion and to even force them into a religion. But it's not the job of the headmaster, not the state. The state is not to participate in that effort. Which means D-Day came and we filed motion against 6 schools. And what we ask is that the following be declared unconstitutional. And Martin Luther King nailed 95 examples to the door of the church. We only picked 59. And I'm only going to mention 20 of them briefly. First one, my pet hates. Forcing pupils to disclose their religion, belief, or conscientious objections. For example, this one, which is a local school in Stellenbosch, they ask you which church you belong to, not even which religion. They assume you're a Christian. So which church? You have to fill in which church. And unless your parent tells you that you shouldn't attend religious observances, the child has to attend it. We wrote in our defense, it is not open to the teachers or a school governing body to decide when a pupil should disclose their beliefs, conscience, sexual orientation, or the like, whether in an application form or otherwise. Now, there was already a ruling made on pregnancy, so there's no way that the courts will decide differently on this one. A few others, just briefly, events where pupils are identified as members or non-members of a faith. Religious references, any anthem, objective, written on the lapel, on the books, whatever, no religious stuff there. Supporting a specific religion. Religious decorations of a singular religion. In South Africa, this is different from many countries in Europe. You may put crosses on the walls in classes, as long as you put the other stuff up there as well. So we want to see the Buddhist 8-spoke wheel, we want to see something about Hinduism, Islam's crescent, moon, and star. How do you put everything up there or nothing? Promoting faith-supportive values, religion as part of assemblies, and we'll get a little bit more on that later. Allowing exposure of learners to religious coercion, which is happening a lot. Teaching creationism, Yuri, your favorite subject. And just quickly on that subject, creationism has been addressed, people. It has been addressed in courts, in overseas, not so much locally as far as I know. The books have been written. The conversation is over. If you want to believe in creationism, be my guest. But it's not knowledge-based. Knowledge-based, we know evolution is a fact. If you don't know that yet, you're either ignorant or stubborn. Opening activities with religion or prayer. Rendering religious instruction, in other words, teaching children how to be religious. Inviting religious leaders to address learners in school contexts on religion. For example, Greta Wied, a popular one, teaching children that masturbation is your road to hell. Reading religious texts or praying in classes. Approving evangelization, of course, sorry. Teaching about sin and damnation. This happens to children who go home in tears because they've never heard about hell, and now they've learned that their father's going to hell from a teacher. Promoting the piousness of personnel, we have the halos. Distributing religious material or promulgating religious stories. Now, somebody else may want to give Bibles to children at school, and they may approach the school to do so, and they may be allowed to do so. But that's not the school itself doing it. But if they allow that, then they must also, as happened in the US, allow, for example, Satanists to dish out coloring books to the children. So the one and the other one, or none. Prompting learners to take religious texts on school excursions. This is a popular one. We're going on a rugby tour, so please bring your Bibles. Promoting religious youth camps and excursions. Again, somebody may want to arrange it, and they may invite children from the school. That's fine. But it's not for the school to arrange. Prayers before or after sporting matches. Another favorite of mine. On these, the court will rule, and the ruling will be in our favor. The first one to react was Afriforum. You know them. I'm sure you've heard of them in the news. And they distributed this pamphlet that says, keep religion in schools. And why do they do that? Because they have this mandate for equal rights and duties of all members with specific focus on minority community groups. Equal participation of members, cultural language rights of minority groups, right to freedom, blah, blah, blah. All members of society equally benefit, all the nice things, right? Those are nice things. Those are good objectives. Except they want to enforce them in schools where they have the majority. So who's the liar here? Right? We never asked to remove religion from schools. You can read through all the papers. We never asked that. We wanted equal participation and free participation, voluntary. Okay? Any feeling of victimization, this is what we wrote in our papers, would have been as a result of the incorrect conveyance of the nature and extent of the relief claimed by the applicant. And what did we see? Typical. This is how the front pages looked. Witch hunt on Christianity. Why are they also always on witch hunts? We invented the witch hunt. Fight to ban religion from schools. Remove God from schools. We never asked that. Religion abuses children's rights. No, some of the religious people abuse. Christian values must be gone from schools. Now, first I thought that, who was at fault here? Was it the papers? Or was it somebody influencing them? And then I thought, okay, but what they're doing is they're quoting people. So they would have this nana, probably from Potch, saying that this is a witch hunt in Christianity. Then they would quote it very conveniently as the head of the article. So maybe they're not to blame. Maybe it's just this guy to be blamed. The people that asked, people they talked to. But then I also noted that one. Fight to ban religion from schools, which is not what we asked. And this is not a quote. So this was thought up by the journalists themselves. So in my mind, it's not just the Potchdoppers that are out to keep religion of their flavor of religion in schools. The papers are actually working towards it as well, either through sensationalism or being stupid. I don't know. Probably won't know ever. But obviously this creates the wrong impression. So this causes people to send money to Afriforum to fight the case that doesn't exist. I, by the way, sent my $10 as well. I wanted them to be sure to be in the courts. So I donated 10 rand. To Afriforum, yes. Can't say I'm not impartial. I have the receipt. In the answering papers, replying to our affidavit, they had excuses from the 6 schools whom we mentioned, and those schools were really coincidental. People came to us, right? So we didn't go out to pick schools. Plus, they had another 7 schools here, and some professional opinions from, among others, Archbishop. What that says is, these guys said, no, we're talking shit. They are treating non-Christians with respect, pretty much. And then they show how these guys are doing it to show that, see, if you're a non-Christian, you're actually very well off. You should be proud to be in those schools. Then the psychologist told us that version, a little bit of force feeding or whatever breeds character. And if they're not allowed to do that, then the Christian kids will suffer. And these guys, yeah, usual shit. We're not really, no, those guys are not real Christians. The true Scotsmen. Bullshit. And what's happening? You can see this Christian ethos. This is, according to them, a school without a Christian ethos, the kids will start smoking pot, for certain. They will start not going to school. They might even kill one another. So a Christian ethos is a prerequisite for good morals, apparently. But even if you write to them and say, please tell us, what do you mean by Christian ethos? Because what does that include? Because Christianity has quite a scope. They never answer you on that. And why? Because this gets manifested in the hidden curriculum, as I explained earlier. And this is typically what happens. You get the women's rights stuff, LGBT rights, religious freedom rights. All those things, they try to protect their views of the world. Now, fortunately, I think we've more or less won the women's rights one. There's still the one in churches we're fighting. LGBT, there's a lot of noise, but I think we've won that one. Religious freedom, obviously we haven't won that one yet. We're busy with that. Freedom of speech, they still ban Lucifer on TV. Error Naidu and his folk. And of course, if you dare to stand up and say, all right, I now have an organization representing some children, would you mind if we make choices again? Then what is Christianity without martyrdom? Richard Botha, well known in Afrikaans circles. Victimized Christian. No, you're just there to get equal rights. That claim is also not reflected in evidence globally. But most importantly, FETSAs themselves launched a project where they try to help schools implementing value-based morals in their schools. And they never mentioned religion in their own project. So obviously you can have morals, as was intended in the national policy, remember, it said values need not be from religions. In fact, some religious values are not kosher. Pun intended. So we can do it without reference to religion. They tried this blank check approach. Parents have the primary right to educate their children, which right extends to an education in values. Yes, but not values that are contrary to the Constitution and taught in public schools. That is not legal. And this is what we replied. The right to education does not include the right to religious education to be provided by the state. Parents and children do have the right to religious instruction, but not at the expense of other citizens, and may do so in their private homes, church, mosques, temples, synagogues, or the like. But what do we have? We have parents who have a liquor party on a Saturday night. On Sunday morning he's too lazy or babblers to take his kid to Sunday school, but now he wants the school to indoctrinate his children. Funny enough, again, you don't need religion for that. Even FETSAs said that much. Another one, they denied. No, we don't promote. Those schools that you mentioned, they do not promote Christianity. They do not promote the interest of any religion, blah, blah, blah. Just a little bit further on, you can see the numbers here. Yeah, but we have adopted. They contradict themselves in their own legal papers. They tried this one. This is a favorite of, not Della Ray, what's his name? Called it. The school as a juristic person has its own right, and they go blah blah blah. We can do it, and then you must respect and protect the rights of others. In other words, you must accommodate them. If you don't want to participate, we will accommodate you. All right. The right to freedom of religion in public schools. I thought I would just sort of summarize it here, but let's give it time. We have time. Through its governing body, according to them, the governing body can decide. Now, we are majority Christians in this school, therefore this will be a Christian school. A juristic person deciding, I am a juristic school. And then we must respect and protect the rights of members of the community that are not Christians. And must prohibit and prevent any discrimination against such learners and educators when they're different, right? Which sounds great on paper. It's illegal, but it sounds great. We'll accommodate them. Let's see how they are accommodated. Typical cases. There are many more. Marika Kenner told she was going to hell by her headmaster. Expelled from school because this is a Christian school and we don't like Muslims in our school, so we accommodate you by telling you to fit in or fuck off. And this is very, very common. I can tell you, Marika is doing well on her way to hell. Oh, when they were offended, they found this on the internet. Somebody made this picture. It wasn't me, unfortunately. Sister, okay, get used to it. Our logo offends them. Chris Klopper almost had a heart attack when I sat next to him on television. Because this is offensive. This isn't, apparently. Okay? And I must tell you guys, in terms of offense, you haven't seen anything yet. It's called freedom of speech. Remember that one little block here that we're still fighting for? We might get Lucifer one day as well. Oh, and they launched this research project. It cost them hundreds of thousands. They flew people over, people as well, people all over the show. And they had these funny little drawings made. As iemand oor Jesus praat. Somebody talks about Jesus. And the question, and this is important, this is the research question, right? Does the Christian ethos, along with blah, 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 have a negative impact on the 6 schools' learner children? What does that have to do with what we asked for? Okay? But anyway, let's go along. I paid for it. And we wrote, it is the right to religious observances which are to be accommodated in accordance to the provisions of section 15.2. Remember I said it was going to be important. What the majority of learners want is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Everything is not wasted. You can publish your scientific research in something like this. I make some money from it, I don't know. And just when we thought that they've wasted all the money, we realized, no, not. Because also what they found is the quantitative data showed a minority who had negative perceptions about the Christian ethos. In other words, they have found that yes, there are some children that are being negatively affected. And what does the Constitution say? You may not do something that discriminates against one child. So thank you for paying all that money. You support our case. And then they tried to get past it and say, you know, but now you have this child, he's the only Muslim in this whole class, and he may feel sort of outside, but by standing up and coming to the teacher and saying, please teacher, stop telling me I'm going to hell, that will build character. Right? It teaches them to be better persons in some fucking weird way. That's truly what they wrote, in more words than this. To which we replied, that's bullshit. Now you can read all this, or you can just go by the well-known phrase. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. That is what our Constitution enshrines. There's no ways of getting past it. They tried to excuse this one. This is another beauty. And I'll give you time to read it. From a professional psychology perspective, and I will know this, religious affiliation and practice is considered a diversity issue, similar to disability or gender and culture. Right, so if you're not Christian, You're sort of disabled in some way. Okay? But let's go with this for a while. It is not advisable for children to avoid engaging in challenging issues such as religious diversity. Sounds good. Moderately challenging situations are vital for the development of mastery, resilience, a positive identity, and social skills, which all contribute to their future competence to function effectively in a democratic, diverse society. Yeah, that could be, right? I haven't read the research, but it sounds good. But why do the non-Christians have to go through this? Why do we have to build our characters in this way? And not the Christian kids? It's not going to go past the High Court or the Constitutional Court. So in our replicating affidavit, which I was very proud to sign, we said, whilst the respondent schools have provided evidence and arguments in relation to the merits of religion and demerits of the absence of religion in schools, it's all irrelevant. The questions to be determined are whether or not the conduct complained of is in contravention of constitutional rights and the religion education policy. That's it. That's all we complained about. We said that your actions are in contravention of these two things. That's all we claimed. That's all what we want to have stopped. For this, the respondent school's conduct, as set out in our original founding affidavit and admitted by them, as you've just seen, suffices. Now, they have some highfalutin professional opinions. We got our professional opinion to also show them that they're talking shit. But that's not even necessary. We did it to go through the motion and to show them that we can have very well educated professors writing excellent reports pro bono for a good cause. Didn't cost us a cent. Favoritism is no longer defensible in schools. All children ought to be treated equally, and the majority's concerns may not be elevated above those of the supposed minority. You're not even supposed to figure out who's the minority and the majority in a school. You're not even supposed to ask them, are you Christian or not? Ultimately, the Constitution is to be upheld, and all are subject thereto. Minorities, majorities, all. And this is what they're trying to do. This is a Christian school, but non-Christians will be accommodated. Fill in your own blanks there. You want to try, this is a white school, but blacks will be accommodated? You want to try that, get past the Constitutional Court? Don't have hope in hell. Unintended. We have the moral high grounds, and you can read through all this stuff, but the respondent schools elected to completely ignore the applicant's examples. In other words, we gave some examples, and there are examples in the national policy as well of if you want to have religious participation, religious observances in a school, these are the parameters that are set. You are free to choose within those parameters, within those limits. The school governing body may set up their own religion policy within those limits. What they're trying to do is to deny those limits. And they neglected to assure religious pupils that they would still be able to have religious observances at their schools. Now, we have many letters that were written to papers, AfriForum, the schools themselves, that said, these Ogod characters, the evil opposition, wants to ban religion from schools. And once they ban it, you won't be able to take a Bible to school. And you may not even tell them that you love Jesus, which is complete bollocks. We never said that. And you can go through the papers yourself. It's public knowledge now. Once it's filed, it's public. We never asked that, but that's what they told the children. They put the fear of God in the kids, their own kids, and the parents. Then they had a survey to say, are you afraid? Nothing in the applicant's application seeks to deprive pupils of their right to express their own religion or culture. We're fighting now for a little guy who's a Rastafari. And meneer Venter in Van der Merwe, which says something already, wants to ban Rastafari from the school because it's pot-smoking evil. It's not his decision. He can ban pot-smoking because it's unconstitutional, but so is hitting a 1-year-old baby. We mentioned specifically this is no crusade, witch hunt, or inquisition. We like those words. We knew they would know what it meant. At the outset, I wish to emphasize that this application is by no means, nor should it be construed as an attack on any particular religion or religion in general whatsoever, nor the right of any person to adhere to any religion, including Satanism and Rastafari. This is purely an application to protect the rights of all pupils in schools, and in particular that of the applicant's members. That's what we're fighting for. And we said there that the people who approached us were from schools that were majority Afrikaans and they all claimed to be Christian. That was just the people who came to us. We never picked schools. Afterwards, we had requests from paganists and Hindus, for example, that were also complaining. And Christians. We have Christians approaching us saying, we can't go on like this. I think those are the real Christians. The underlying rationale is that a community may not exclude other members, even if a minority, from a public community such as a public school. Nor may a community, and especially a public community such as a public school, segregate its community members where a public function such as education is present. What that means is you can't have a class and say, all right, class, we're all Christians here. If you're not a Christian, go out. Right? Or put your fingers in your ears. We're going to pray. If the religious observance is to be held at a school, this is important. Those who wish to attend thereat may be welcome to do so. This is different from providing an opportunity for those who do not wish to be present to remove themselves from the situation or not attend a classroom or assembly, which would otherwise be obligatory and which they would otherwise receive reported administrative information. I didn't write these things. I have difficulty reading them. The effect of allowing persons to leave as opposed to persons to come to a religious observance is that those who leave will be labeled to be different from the majority. Now, take your minds back 30 years. Moet jy gaan border toe? Right? We had call-ups. We shall go to war. If you do not wish to go to war, you shall file a conscientious objection. What did we think of people who filed conscientious objections? We thought they were the scum of the earth. We were taught to think that of them. So a child of 7 in a primary school class who happens to be atheist, Muslim, Rastafari, teacher stands up and says, put your hands up. Who's given their heart to Jesus? He is forced to make a conscientious objection at the age of 7 in front of all his mates. You think they're going to get that past the Constitutional Court? They won't. There are a couple of other institutions who are fighting desperately to keep the status quo. This one is the South African Council for the Protection and Promotion of Religious Rights and Freedom, which I suggest we pronounce Slartibaardvast. Slartibaardvast. The answer is 42. Ask me afterwards. Now, they and Jacques will know these guys. He loves them because they're humorous. Okay? They have this Charter of Religious Rights and Freedoms with lots of funny stuff in it. But this one in particular I like. Every person has the right to make public statements and participate in public debate on religious grounds, which is great. Right? But then, every religion has the right, person has the right to religious dignity, which includes not to be ridiculed or slandered on grounds of his crap that he just spewed. Okay? So what they're expecting me is they have the right to criticize gays, but I may not ridicule him when he does that. Okay? They may talk about supernatural entities, but I may not kid about it. They may tell everyone how God protects them. If I highlight that it's maybe not true, I may not do so. Okay? Don't kid about evolution, guys. Right? Ooh. I might tell you you're going to hell, but if I tell you you're a bad person, then I'm differentiating against you. Again, Rudy's favorite. If you don't like evolution, hit it with a ball. Bollocks. Freedom of religion essay. Oh, That's his favorite. Highly upset with the imminent closure of harvest fields. They write that publicly. The harvest fields of schools will be closed to them. They also often fake about being a friend of the court, and they're going to do it again. I promise you they're going to do it again. They ask for donations so they can fight this cause and be an amicus curiae, friend of court, in this case. But they never apply for it. They haven't to date applied for it even. So what they will do is, at the date of the court case, they will have selfies taken with the actual advocates on the case, all right? So click, 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 click. And they said, we were friends of the court. Thank you for the donations. We're going to have a hamburger. They're going to do it again, I promise you. I can foresee this happening. They also defend the biblical right of corporal punishment for babies, which Adrian and Hannah is fighting for us. Afriforum, what can I say? Very upset that you want to take away the last opportunity of the cultural protection of small-scale majority rule by claiming minority protection. And Paul Collins takes this case very personally, and they lie a lot. We've seen that already. South African Teachers Union, Chris, very dopper. I'm sure he's a dopper. I know this Slaughter Bartfast guy is Peter Kurtzen. He was born with a broomstick in his ass. He's the definitive potch dopper. Now this guy is upset because I'm taking on his teachers, blah, blah, blah. And he even gave them tips on how to keep me out, because I went, when some teacher in Johannesburg said that I must come to his class, he will show me. I went to his class and I asked him. And it was very embarrassing to them all, and so he gave tips. No, he has until the day of the court's verdict to give tips to his teachers about the consequences of acting in contempt of court, because we will nail them. I don't know what they want to do, maybe impossible feats. They said they want to be amicus curiae, they haven't applied yet. Court for Justice has applied. They're against anything. They're the reason for anything. But anyway, they oppose the ideological totalitarianism. That's what they call what we're asking for, right? Asking for constitutional rights is ideological totalitarian. And they don't want to write Ogod. It's O-G-O-D. By referring the court to international jurisprudence in the interest of vague 19th century values. And because, now, I will be sure to show them this international jurisprudence case of where they're actually fighting against secularism. That's relevant, don't you think? I'll be sure to show that to the court on their behalf. Recent. You must keep in mind, you can't just apply to be an amicus to the court and then pitch up there and they count the hands and whoever has most hands win. You have to add something. So this occupy shit's not going to work there. You have to say that we have a new proposition for you. And this is what Slaughter Bartfast tried to do. They didn't answer any of our questions or opposition or anything. They want to tell the court how kids should be taught. How kids should be taught, how they should be brought up religiously, which is not the court's issue. The Constitution said, do that at home, do it in your church, do it wherever you want, send them on Jesus camps, whatever you want. They have the freedom. The 15% of their time they spend in the class, on the bunks, learning, is not going to be spent inculcating religion. I'm still not sure how they're going to get this done, but leave to them. Freedom. On our side, the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, and I beg you to read up who they are. These are high flyers, some prominent names in there. They will argue that the national religion policy is consistent and that the practices at the schools are unconstitutional. So thank you, we will have a day of rest while these guys argue this. And these guys know what they're talking about because they were involved in the whole shebang. We have the Minister of Basic Education on our side. At first, she said she was going to abide by the ruling of the court. She gave notice. Then she saw the shit that they wrote, the schools. Then she said, no, I'm going to attend this. This is fun. I'm going to put my side there. So she's on our side. And this is the history. It's been a long time, guys. 1996, right? National Policy 2003, when my kids were born. That's when I started fighting. National headlines reached, mostly in Afrikaans press. The English press was laughing at it most of the time. Of late, they got involved. Motion to interdict, 28th of August. Most things seem to happen in August, September, August. Funny. Supernatural, maybe. They gave notice to defend. Then the ministers, both ministers, Justice and Basic Education, said, no, they'll abide by the court. Then we received the affidavit. Then Cassick affidavit was filed. Then the Minister of Basic said, that's a bullshit. I will now attend the court, which is great. We had till 31st of January, but I was out of country, so I was a bit late. I arrived on the 8th of February, we filed on the 9th. And they were very upset with us for being a week late. After they took 10 months and 4 extensions. What is with these guys? SARTU has applied for abacus. Slarte Bart has applied. I don't know if they will be. The court needs to decide. We just said, in fact, let the court decide. We'll be happy. Whoever is there, we'll meet it. That's the cause for justice. They didn't write a big thing. Normally you would put a piece of paper together and say, we want to raise these and these 4 points based on this and this jurisprudence, whatever. No, these guys want a hearing with the court to convince them. You're not even going to be there. They're welcome. Then after that, both us and the respondents have to file heads of argument, after which amicus curiae will submit their little pieces, maybe another month to go. After that, the courts will tell us, all right, they think this might take 4 days, for example. They have an opening in hopefully September, so they give us a court date. So we're still off waiting for the court date to be provided. But if all goes well, depending on what happens with these amici guys here, we may see a date set in September this year. Then the fun starts, right? They will appeal. There's no doubt they will, because they will lose. They will lose. You've just seen the arguments. They have no arguments. They misrepresented themselves. They will lose. Then they will appeal. Then we go to Bloemfontein. And they will appeal that one as well. We'll go to constitutional courts. I wrote a book there, which I mentioned earlier. But eventually, justice will be served. It will. There's no ways you're going to get past the Constitution. You can, if you get a 75% majority in a political vote, you can change the Constitution. All right? Stront National has what, 1% of the vote so far? Good luck. This is what has been happening, guys. Everything else was in the shadow of these two cohorts. That's going to change. You're going to see a headline like this coming. Now, where their advocates will be capitulating in front of the Supreme Court, Constitutional Court. You're going to see that. Why? Because you have to have everybody on the same page. It's law. It's constitutional law. And it says to promote the achievement of equality, legislative and other measures may be taken. So that's the point where we are now, taking these measures. The affidavit was 44 pages of signatures and 1,900 pages of bullshit, which was easy to tear apart, because they had all this fighting stuff about taking religion away, but it wasn't going to happen. But no doubt they will try to win anyway, against all odds. All right, so maybe protracted procedure, maybe they're waiting for the second coming. Or find us guilty of a technical mishap there, act of God, I don't know. But they can't win. Can't win. That is the junior lawyer in the case. What happened to the others? Oh yeah, I have the other guys there. Eh? Of course, we're the good guys. Of course. There's no doubt. There's no doubt, right? We're the good guys. You can find us on Facebook. Now, I have 2 more slides. If you are interested, if you don't mind, another 5 minutes only, because that will explain to you the history of, or the motivation behind what they're doing, and why they're fighting a lost cause, because they can't win this cause. Why are they fighting this? You can do it afterwards, you can have a breakfast, or we can do it now quickly. Do it now, right. In the good old days, the Bible told us what the case was, right? And your priest told you what God wanted for you in life. And that was hunky-dory. And then people started investigating nature, and they called it natural theology. It wasn't science yet, it was natural theology. And they went and they saw, ooh, this is beautiful green grass. God must have made it. And those hills look like titties, so the devil must have made them. And they went about connecting the Bible with nature. But then, in the 19th century, we started to find embarrassing results like tectonic plates and the heliocentric solar system, deep time, and the killer, Darwin, 1859, evolution. We were poking our heads through the ceiling of what Genesis allows us to know. Right? And a conscious decision was made by a bunch of noners in America. It's always America. Around about 1890s, beginning of the 1900s, to return to the fundamentals. There are certain things you do not question. The earth was created. It was a virgin birth. Jesus was resurrected. Those are the fundamentals. Whatever disproves that must be wrong. And they made a conscious decision to turn back. And that's what we're having now. That's what Yuri is fighting. Those kind of people. Now, science itself has broken free from the Genesis story. It's gone past. But the other guy's playground is below the Genesis ceiling. And that is what they're fighting. It's an emotional thing. They don't care about what's true. Whenever it contradicts the Bible, that's nonsense. That's my own theory about it. Last one. Why do the schools fight a hopeless battle? Is there anybody here that would like to hazard a guess? If they're going to lose anyway. So, yeah. They have some good lawyers in there. They must know that they're going to lose. They can't be that stupid. There? That's a good point. Teachers lack confidence. This is about a holy war. They will lose this battle. They will keep on fighting. Because what other option do they have? They cannot possibly conceive. We are the enemy. Anybody who thinks that anybody above the Genesis ceiling is the enemy, and God's anointed may not capitulate. No court verdict will end this conflict. The war against evil and his allies on earth must continue till the end of days. They will fight. And don't think the constitutional court verdict will be an end to the fight. They will weasel their ways in, like they're doing in America. They have to. They have to. They have to. So we're in for the long haul.